Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's complimentary webinar from Value Selling Associates. Today's topic is social selling, and we're going to be talking about new ways to find prospects online in order to engage them offline and actually get a meeting to have a sales call to go through the selling process. It's been fun to watch all of you log in this morning. We have people from all over the U.S. and from outside of the U.S. as well. It looks like the person who has joined us from the furthest from the U.S. this morning is an attendee from Singapore. So we're thrilled to have you online today to talk about social selling. So what is social selling? Well, I looked online and found that one of the definitions of social selling is for sales reps to use social media to engage potential buyers wherever the buyer is in that journey, to feed them content to add value to those buyers so that when that buyer is ready to buy, that sales rep and their company are top of mind. So we're going to talk a little bit about what social selling is and how we can maximize it. In today's fast-paced selling world, where the selling process is often completely out of sync with the buying process, it is harder and harder for sales reps to cold call, to get the attention, and to get the appointment with new prospects and new buyers. Social selling is a way to warm up those cold calls, to build relationships in order to gain access long term. We're going to talk about some of the keys to social selling and how you, as a sales rep, can get better at social selling today. So let's dive into it. I will let you know that today's session is being recorded, and if you are interested in that recording, it'll be made available to you at the end of the day. As well as we will be taking questions throughout the webinar. So if you have a question, please type that in, and our producer will make sure those questions are brought to my attention, and we'll address them as we go along. And I will also address any questions at the end of today's webinar. So we're going to talk specifically about a few things this morning. We're going to talk about why is social selling so buzzy today? Why is everyone trying to figure out how to get better at it and what it can do to help them build pipeline and close more deals? We're going to talk about how to use social selling to target and attract new buyers, how to use it to focus on the right people, and how to create a personal brand online so that the right people can also find you. Social selling becomes a two-way street when it comes to prospecting. We not only want to find the right people, but we want to make sure that the right people, when they are starting to do research, find us as well. And then we're going to talk also about strategies to move offline from the online conversations. How do we actually use the information and the insights that both we gain and provide in social selling to identify the right people, get the appointments, build trust and credibility, and build an offline relationship from them? We're going to talk about how we can leverage our connections for additional references and introductions as well. Some of you may be aware that LinkedIn, which is really one of the largest social networking platforms for business professionals to find other business professionals, has created what they call a social index. And that social index is based on 4 pillars or 4 key components. And they will actually go into those organizations that are their customers and tell them what their social index is. And the 4 pillars that are associated with this social index are the 4 pillars that we're going to ask you to start to think about. Number 1, the brand. What is your personal brand and how is that represented in your profile? Number 2, who are the people that you're connected to? And are those connections growing and are they actively engaged with you? Number 3, what are the insights that you're adding to the conversation when it comes to this whole social selling world, and how do you contribute to that? And then number two, what are some of the relationships that you also have? And LinkedIn will look at that and come up with a social selling index. We're not going to talk about how they calculate that, but we are going to talk about some of the keys to making sure that you are maximizing your social engagement for the purpose of finding new prospects. So let's get into it. Social selling is not new. For years, we talked about how you can socialize with prospects to make it easier for them and more receptive for them to access us. In the past, it was, what are the networking events that you're going to go to? What are the business and technical associations that you should participate to? Where can you go to find prospects in a more social setting so that when the time is appropriate for a business conversation, you already have established that relationship? The only thing that's new about this is the platform that we're using. Rather than getting in our cars and driving to a meeting, we are now building those relationships online. Today I'm going to be specifically talking about LinkedIn because for most of the clients that Value Selling works with and most of the business sales organizations, that is the platform that salespeople use to remain connected, to build relationships, and to establish their subject matter expertise in an area. So technology-enabled social selling is sort of taking what you would do at a networking event and figuring out how to replicate that online. So what would you do at a face-to-face networking event? Well, you would show up and have the right professional image, whether that's dressing like the other people that are there, being prepared, being on time, being timely with your comments, and then engaging and interacting and listening and conversing. What else would you do in that? You would add value. You would come with a point of view or perspective for the topic of discussion at a networking event and be prepared to add value to the people you meet. That is also something that we want to do now that we are technology enabled with that social networking. What else would you do at a face-to-face network? Well, you might try to find out for people that might not be the ideal prospect for you, who might they be able to introduce you to that would be the ideal prospect? A similar thing that we can do online. So think of all of the things that you've done in the past. If you have done face-to-face networking and you believe that's important to your business development strategy, and how we can take the same principles and tweak and tune those for the appropriate online platform. So here's a couple of pieces of data points for you. Last year, Mark Friedman, a writer for Forbes magazine, wrote an article, and he said that social media users that are sales professionals are outperforming non-social media users that are sales professionals. And the data that he quoted was 79% of salespeople using social media will outsell those that don't, and 23% of users that are proficient and successful at social media will make quota attainment ahead of those who don't. So it matters. Here's another data point for you as you look through this. The CEB, I went too fast here. CEB, Corporate Executive Board, another data set that you can look at. 57% of buying decisions are made before the sales rep is involved. That means that customers are doing the research, answering questions, either determining whether or not it's worth talking to you or worse, not worth talking to you, and you don't even know that they are often engaged in a decision-making process to buy or do something differently. Social selling may be a vehicle to get you insight into that. And last but not least, Serious Decisions, another very well-known and robust research company, says that 79%, 4 out of 5 buyers will do a search on either your company name or you as a sales rep before they engage or agree to a meeting. So they're doing that to draw some conclusions about your credibility and your ability to meet whatever need they think they might have at the time. So how you present and represent in your personal brand today is more important than ever. And we're going to talk about how we do that. So what is the point of social selling? What is the point of social selling? Well, it is to, first and foremost, have a mechanism to build some relationships. We want to find prospects. We want to engage people. We want to add value to them, whether or not they're in a buying decision cycle today or not. We want to build relationships from that networking perspective so that when they are ready to buy, they think of us. We want to establish trust. One of the keys to successful selling has always been and will always be our ability to establish trust, rapport, and credibility. That means, do we represent ourselves in a way that proves that we're trustworthy, that we're credible, that we know what we're doing, that we have rapport, that we have common interests, common goals, alignment to those prospects. Social selling is a mechanism and a platform to do that. And last but not least, can we demonstrate how we add value to our customers, both as individual professionals as well as the companies represent and how they add value to the customers that we are going to work with. So we want to think about how we can use social selling for that. In my opinion, what that means is social selling really is kind of a goofy name because we're not actually selling on social media. We are using social media to build those relationships. And we'll talk about that when it comes to how we engage in conversations on social media. But it means that we're not going to find somebody and propose something to them. We're going to find somebody in order to meet with them offline and then determine if it's appropriate to propose. And I kind of call the analogy as we want to date the individual before we propose marriage. And I do see some sales reps jumping into a conversation and saying, let me send you a proposal for what I have. Or let me tell you exactly what you need to do with my company. Or let me tell you why my company is the perfect right to do that, as opposed to talk in the conversation, expand that conversation, and then ask for a meeting. Just like any social conversation, it is not about us, it's about the customer and the prospect that we're trying to engage with. Value is defined by them, and we need to listen and respond and participate in a conversation that is focused on them, not us. And just like if you were at a face-to-face networking event and somebody showed up and started talking to you and telling you how great they are, you would likely want to get out of that conversation as quickly possible because that person might be considered arrogant or boastful. We don't want to appear arrogant and boastful on social media. We want to be confident, we want to be credible, we want to add value, but we don't want to be perceived as arrogant. So how do we establish that credibility? Well, it's going to be all related to our ability to demonstrate our expertise and our influence. What is our point of view? What value add can we contribute to conversations that are going on about the topics that are of interest to our customers and our potential customers? So let's talk about how we can build that personal brand. We talked a little bit about how social selling is really a two-way street. We want to find buyers, but we also want to be attractive and found by buyers that might be in the market. So the way to do that is to start to really look at what does your profile look like? Does your profile look like your resume, like you are looking for a job? Or does your profile look like you are an expert in the area that you represent in the marketplace? So, for example, if I am selling sales training, does my profile look like somebody who has expertise in sales training? Do I have a compelling summary of my capabilities? Do I have maybe not just my title in my subject line, but what I do and kind of that value statement to our customers? In my case, I talk about my ability to accelerate sales performance for sales organizations. And so take a look at your profile and start to think about, if you were looking at that and you didn't know you, how would you look at that profile? And review that profile. Are you currently engaged with some of the key influencers in your industry segment and market? So, for example, if you sell payroll services and there are experts in the industry that look at human resource issues, compliance issues, are you following them? Are you engaged with those influencers to get insight and perspective that then you can share and comment on with your contacts? Are you adding valuable content, not marketing content, but valuable content that would answer questions or provide insight to the people that you are attracting? Many of the best profiles today have media-rich content. Maybe it is a video clip that you have on there, or a PowerPoint presentation that you can share, or some other compelling information that you would link into your profile. As crazy as it sounds, when you look at your profile, can somebody find out how to contact you? Do you have your direct email address? Do you have your phone number? Do you have your website? I can't tell you how many profiles I look at as salespeople, and if I wanted to call them, their contact information isn't even on their profile. Do you have a professional picture of you that represents the image that you want to portray in that marketplace? It's probably not the same image that you have on your Facebook page that might be you at a backyard barbecue holding a margarita or a beer. It's a professional picture that represents how you want to represent to the potential buyers that might visit your page or want to connect with you. So look at that LinkedIn profile. Ask others to look at it. Ask others for feedback on what you can do to make that more compelling, more interesting, more complete, so that you are presented in LinkedIn as the professional sales rep that you are. Then you want to also look at, how are you growing your contacts? What is your goal to grow those contacts over time, and who are you targeting with that? So let's talk about how we target those prospects. One of the first things I want to look at is, am I connected to my current clients? Am I connected to all of my current clients and all of the potential people that I would be engaging in that? Am I expanding those contacts every day? Am I connecting with people that I meet offline and following up with them? Am I watching and listening and participating in groups and conversations that my customers participate in? So I want to go and look at some of my key customers and look at, what are the groups that they are members of? Are they members of an industry group? Are they members of a role-based group? Are they members of any type of group that I might also want to join that group and become part of the conversation, to listen and watch what the top of mind topics are, the questions coming out? And once I do that, I can then go into those groups and identify additional people that I might want to connect with. I also want to get to know the people that I am connected with and think about ways that I can add value and share with them and really understand what are they looking for, what questions are they asking. I recently was participating in a group for sales enablement professionals, and I saw that one of the prospects that we are talking to started asking some questions about best practices in all around sales enablement and sales process rollout and adoption. And I joined in that conversation, not to tell them that, we've got all the answers for you, but to add value and contribute to that conversation. And looking at some of those. So we do have a question, and I want to address that. And the question is this: is it okay to spam add people on LinkedIn to grow your network? I think that it is always good to look at how you can approach people from a place of commonality in order to ask them to meet. So often, I will look at some of those groups that I think my key target buyers would be in and reach out and connect to people through that group and maybe reference whether or not we've got something in common. Maybe we've got a contact in common. Maybe we have a common company in our background. I will look for some commonality to establish rapport. Just like you would do that in an online meeting, you would do that, or in an offline meeting, you would do that online. Yesterday, I made a sales call with one of the sales professionals on my team, and he had done his homework looked at the LinkedIn profiles for the two people that we met. And as we opened the meeting, we were talking about the background of how we came together and some of the items that we had in common. And it turned out that the person that we were meeting with, and my sales associate had a common university. They had both attended a common university. So that came up. It was visible on the LinkedIn profile, and it immediately kind of opened a conversation where we established a little bit more rapport and furthered a little bit more of the relation through that. I think just spamming people that you don't know and that there's no reason that they would expect to hear from you will not be as successful for you. So looking at that and sending a personal note of the connection and why you would like to connect with them is, I think, important from that. Another thing that is always interesting to think about, not only following people, but following the company pages of some of your prospects. So I have a number of prospects that I'm working with. I go into LinkedIn and follow their pages. Follow in one of those companies, one of their executives is kind of a thought leader in the industry. So I follow him and I comment and share some of his insights as a way to create communication and support that as well. So a couple different ways to target those prospects and engage in conversations with them. So now the whole reason that we're doing this is to figure out how we can actually get an appointment and engage in a conversation. As I look at some of you on the line today, listening to this webinar, some of you primarily sell over the phone. You are talking to people, building relationships, creating opportunities, managing those opportunities, and closing those opportunities without ever establishing a face-to-face meeting. And for many of you, that's a very appropriate way to sell. And inside sales, as that's often is called, is becoming more and more sophisticated. And yet, you still want to establish those sales calls and those meetings over the phone. For those of you that are face-to-face, even if you're face-to-face or field sales, my experience is that much of the communication that you're having is still over the phone or in a web meeting like this or some other online meeting forum. So even though you may have the ability to go meet with them face to face, often that communication is still over the phone. So how do we get the appointments, whether it is over the phone, that we have a dedicated time to engage that prospect and have a conversation, or that we set that up in a face-to-face meeting? Well, let's talk about how we do that. One of the ways to do that is to have good content that would become the reason for you to have that meeting. Content marketing is more and more important in today's world than ever before. And that's not just brochures. It truly is content that the prospect might have access to that would ask questions. It is webinars like today. This is one form of content marketing. We will probably take some of these slides in this recording and add it to some of our LinkedIn presence as a way to establish some credibility for the people that we talk to. White papers are another type of content marketing. Newsletters, blog posts. Many sales reps have their own blog that they want to leverage. Many of your companies have somebody who's responsible for blogging or creating that content that you can leverage. But the content is what will ultimately contribute to attracting them in those types of meetings. And then to remember that relationships take time. And timing is important for relationships. So it's not just expecting that everybody you connect to is going to allocate time for a meeting out of that. Again, it's nurturing that relationship so that they know what you do, who you represent, and why you could add value to them, so that when timing is right, you are top of mind. And one of the things that we have found, whether it is in traditional prospecting or social selling prospecting, is that discipline pays off. So the question I have for you is, do you have a specific amount of time allocated every day, every week, every month to nurture and build relationships online? To nurture and build the relationships that you're creating in your social selling presence. One of the sales reps that works for me is very specific and has set targets for herself that every day her goal is to reach out to a minimum of 5 or 6 new people. And that might be a reconnection to somebody that she's already connected to, in checking in and touching base socially, or it may be finding a new connection and asking to connect with them or getting engaged with them. And it has been really inspiring to watch her social presence and the number of really good connections that she has created grow exponentially. If her goal is 5 to 18 and she's adding 10 to 15 new connections every single week to her LinkedIn connections and establishing relationships with those people, she is doing a phenomenal job of building those relationships. And I will tell you that that has turned into exponential pipeline growth, because she's been very purposeful in those interactions. She spent a lot of time to get her profile right, to participate in the groups. Every day she's looking at that group content and contributing to those conversations, and is truly establishing herself as a subject matter expert in our space. One of the keys to participating in those groups that we've also found is when people are asking different questions in those groups and contributing those conversations, there is often an opportunity to private message them. There's certainly some opportunity to comment and add into the conversation that is the group conversation, but often those opportunities could be a private message, maybe not even an initial ask for a connection, private message where you could add some more value to that individual or add some expertise that you could share with them. I have another question that I want to address real quick, and this is from Mike, and he asks, other than current clients, should I invite prospects to connect with me on LinkedIn? And my answer to that is yes. I always invite my prospects to connect with them in LinkedIn. If I have a meeting with someone, I will connect with that and ask to connect with them. If I have met with someone or met someone at a conference, I will connect with them online. One of the best practices that I have found is I always customize the invitation and asking them to connect. And it might be as simple as, I'm looking forward to meeting you next Wednesday at our meeting and would like to connect with you in preparation for that meeting, or it was wonderful to meet you last Wednesday. I would love to connect with you as our conversation unfolds. So private or tailoring and creating private messages is really important for that perspective. Another thing is I do, as a tip, I look when people connect with me that are unsolicited, and I do look at those profiles. So, for example, I have gotten a number of profiles of people that I've never heard of them. They're not connected to anybody I know. They have a suspicious, or not a suspicious profile, but a profile that is sufficiently vague. I decline those invites, and that's my personal take on that. I do not necessarily accept every invitation that comes to me. I look at that profile and make a determination: is this person that I want to be affiliated with, that I want to have represented as a professional contact that I have? And so that would be something else that you can look at as you go through that. Another question that Bill asked, the second part of this question is, would you invite the prospect before the meeting or speaking to them? Absolutely. And I would absolutely look at their profile. And I would look for a few things. Number one, if I am connected to them, I would look at who they're connected to. Are they connected to my competitors? Are they connected to anybody else? Do we have anything in common in our network, whether it's people, corporations, or groups? Are they connected to other people in my company? And I look at all of those things as just another set of data points and information that may help me prepare for that call. So let's kind of review some of the things that we've talked about today, and I'll be happy to take a whole bunch of questions, and they're coming in, which is really interesting. So first of all, social selling is nothing new. What's new is that now we have a platform or a set of platforms, because there's a whole bunch of platforms out there that make it easier for us to do this online as opposed to offline. But all the rules that would apply for online networking or offline networking, I believe apply to online networking. Are you professional? Are you relevant? Are you credible? Does your profile reflect the image and the expertise and the value add that you can bring? And that is one of the first calls to action that I would like you to start to look at. What is your profile? Is it complete? Look at it objectively. Is it complete? I mean, aside from kind of the general specifics of is it easy to get a hold of you if you find your profile? Does it have your contact information, your website? Is it current? I actually saw once you're connected to people, as you know, when you go into LinkedIn, you get all kinds of information about them. Please congratulate Joe Smith on his 2-year anniversary at this company. Or please congratulate Joe Smith on his new role at a new company. I actually saw one of those updates come through, and it was asking me to congratulate somebody who was a client of mine that made a job change a year ago. and he had not updated his profile yet. So, and he was a sales professional. So that meant that people were likely not going to find him if they were looking for him to do business with him in his current company. It also might mean that if he was prospecting for his current company and somebody did look at him, it might be confusing for them. It might not be the most professional image that he could have done from that perspective. And then listen to the groups and be nice. I do not think that business-to-business social networking is the place to have radical political conversations. It is not the place to criticize people publicly, whether it's warranted or not, or competition. Be nice, be social, listen, contribute to the conversation, add value. And then think about what your goals are. Our short-term goal is to build relationships, build our network, build our pipeline. Our next midterm goal is to get that appointment. We want to always be looking at how can I use my network and my network's network to get more appointments. And then bottom line is it's about increasing our sales. With the old adage, when it comes to are we doing the right activities to get in front of the right people, to have the right conversations, to close good business. And then last but not least, discipline and habit. We talked about some of the data from some very good, credible organizations at the beginning of this about why social selling matters. Well, just having an online presence isn't enough. Like just having a phone, if you're cold calling for prospecting, isn't enough. It's the discipline to engage and the habits you build around that. So look at your activities for prospecting. Do you have calendared time on your calendar to build relationships online, to reach out to those contacts and connect to new contacts? Very important as you look at your social selling and build that discipline. What are your metrics? Maybe it's not 5 to 6 new contacts and ultimate relationships every day, but what are they? If you're a major account sales rep, who are the individuals that you're targeting outside of your current buying centers? Is it new business units? Is it new divisions? Is it new geographies that you are gaining access to create new opportunities? Social selling works for major accounts, field sales, small business, government sales, education, public sector. More and more people are building their professional profiles online for the purpose of conducting business. So let's look at some of these other questions. And Chris has been, who's our producer today, has been feeding me some of these questions. But let me determine this. And I am not the technical expert on all of LinkedIn's capabilities. They do have many levels of services, and one of their levels of services is called the Sales Navigator product. It's a fee-based product. Many of the organizations that we work with use Sales Navigator. And the question is, can you determine in LinkedIn if your prospect has actually read your in-mail message through LinkedIn? And I am not sure of that technical answer. I believe so, but that would be a better answer served for your LinkedIn account manager or something like that. Another question has to do with if you're using something like Facebook, do you recommend using 2 profiles, one that's public-facing and that is professional and one that is more personal? I think that is a matter of choice that every person has to create. Often your companies have Facebook pages. Whether you're business-to-business sales or business-to-consumer sales, they have a Facebook page. I have some sales reps that I know of that have set up their a professional Facebook page where they share different type of contacts and content and build a different type of network that is more professionally oriented than their standard Facebook page. So if you look at what Facebook has often become, it's connections with, friends from high school and college, family members, and we all have people in those networks that are very open about sharing different things. There might be a situation where you don't want the people that you're associating with professionally to have access or insight to that. That's a personal decision. Personally, I do not expand my business network into my Facebook network. I use my business network primarily on LinkedIn. I have a company page on Facebook that we use and share information on Facebook, but I do not typically have my personal connections sharing opinions, etc. on Facebook. Here's another question. With a first personal contact with a potential client, should I say I saw your link to contact, or I read this, or yes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It shows that you've done your homework, that you understand who that person is, and you're prepared for that meeting. If they've put something on LinkedIn, it is out there for public consumption, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Let me take a couple more questions, and we'll then go into some further information about some upcoming events here from Value Selling. Hi, is there a time level of prospect where a LinkedIn invite is more appropriate than other types of emails? At Value Selling, we always teach people that when you're working to gain access with people that you don't have access to, that you want to launch a campaign that covers multiple modes of communication, because until you meet with that individual, you don't know what their preference is for communication. So we teach sales reps that it's great to have an email message that is surrounded by a voicemail message, and if you are also using social networking, you would also potentially replicate that in an in-mail message from LinkedIn to go to them. My experience is that depending on your the content of your in-mail and how you might initially use that to get their attention is critical. My also experience is depending on the individual, some people don't go to in-mail in LinkedIn. They go to their regular email, and they might not have it set up appropriately that they're even notified that there's those in-mails. So you never want to assume that just because you sent a message, it's been received. You want to follow up in multiple formats from that perspective. So as we wrap up today, any of your questions that I did not get a chance to answer today, I will address either with you directly or in a blog post from Value Selling or newsletter content from that perspective. So keep your eyes peeled for that. If you're interested in learning more about some of the programs that Value Selling has to offer, please visit our e-store. Please visit us on LinkedIn. If you are not connected to me on LinkedIn, please find me, Julie Thomas. I'll give you my LinkedIn later. If you have any comments on today's webinar or additional questions that you'd like to address, please use Twitter as a format to share those questions, or go to the Value Selling LinkedIn page and share information, comments, insight on today's webinar, or future topics that you would like us to address. And we also have a YouTube channel as well if you are interested in more recorded webinars or information from that perspective. I do want to share with you that our next webinar, which will be in March, is on credibility and how can we use storytelling to increase and improve our credibility when we are opening calls and engaging with executives. So it's all about establishing credibility and using storytelling as a way to do that. And we're going to actually give you a format to build out some stories that you can pepper into your presentations, your sales calls, your conversations to improve the odds that you're perceived as credible as well as knowledgeable in your space. So with that, I will thank you for joining us. My email, my LinkedIn profile, and my Skype ID are all listed here, as well as my phone number. We would love to hear from you here at Value Selling. We would love for you to share your perspectives on value selling and today's webinar on our social platforms, as well as engage with us, ask questions, and any further questions on how we can help you. Good luck as you go through this. Take a look at your profiles. Good selling, and always remember to sell with value. Have a great day, and we'll see you in March.